Good evening, and welcome to Think About It Thursday. My name is Henry Dotson, and I am the founder of I'm doing new things today, as you can possibly see. Oops, hang on, we're having fun here. I am the founder of Our Journeys of Faith Life Coaching, and this is Think About It Thursday. As you can see, we're kind of doing it a little differently this time. We're making minor changes, trying to make things a little bit better for you. So give me some feedback. Tell me what you think about how we're laying things out here. But every Thursday, we get together and we talk about the spiritual cancer journey that a Christian goes through once they've received their diagnosis. And last week, we left you at the low point, where we were at the bottom of the valley of dependence. And we had gotten to the point where things were not, the pain and suffering was great. We weren't feeling the presence of God. We were really being in a struggle. And the outcome, the physical outcome of the cancer journey was uncertain. And so that's where we pick it up now. We're still at that point. But last week, we talked about the fact that we had entrusted our lives to God. And what that means is that we have totally given everything we have and of our very life, our very existence, and we have put it in the hands of God. And we're going to leave it there and trust that He knows what He's doing, even though we don't understand what's going on. We don't know what's going to happen as a result of this, but it's our faith that says that we should just entrust our lives to God. And last week we said that there's a difference between entrusting your life to God and surrendering your life to God. When you surrender something, that means that you're giving something up and you're thinking about what we asked you to not think about just the thought of giving it up, but also to think about what you're exchanging it for. But we really weren't that clear as to exactly what we were exchanging it for. And so when we entrust our lives to God, then that means that even though we don't know what that is, we are going to trust that God is going to do His will for our good in this situation. And that means whether or not we survive in this side of eternity or not really doesn't matter. And that's the entrustment to God. And so that's where we are. And when we start at that point, this is where the miraculous happens. This is the point where you will really experience God at His fullest. And so here we have at our in our Think About It Thursday, what we have for Think About It Thursday is this. Think about what God has done for you in the past and His promises for your future. And when you think about that, how does that affect the way you view your present situation? How do your afflictions in the moment compare with the glory promised in your eternity? So this is what we're saying here is when you entrust your life to God, then you truly have to just dwell on all He's done and His promises for your future, because you have trusted that to Him. And so on Mindset Monday, we said that a transformation will begin. A transformation will begin at rock bottom of the valley of dependence. And that's where you are, the rock bottom of the valley of dependence. And there, what you will find is entrusting your life to God has put you in this place where spiritual transformation begins. And your transformation begins with your awakening to the awesome truth that God's right there with you, Even though you don't feel him, you don't feel his presence, when you come to that reality that God is there in the midst of the darkest moment of your dark night of the soul, your awakening occurs because your will is totally aligned with God's will. And with this alignment, you begin to transcend self and you begin to see yourself more in the way God sees you. You expand your self boundaries and increase your awareness of dimensions that are greater than self. And you transcend your pain and suffering, and you begin to integrate your past and your present in a way that has meaning for the present. So this is an awesome, awesome place to be when that transformation starts to happen. Because at that point, this is when God performs his miracles to the maximum of his abilities. Because God can only perform abilities, God can only do what you want him to do in you to the level of your faith. If you have a little faith, God can only demonstrate a little of his power. But when you have a lot of faith, God can demonstrate a lot of his power. So at this point, because you have entrusted your life to him and your will is aligned totally with him, then guess what? His total power can be demonstrated in your life. And that's when the miracles start to happen. So it's at this point where transformation, spiritual transformation starts to happen. And we can see that in that story, The Dark Night of the Soul, which is a book, and it talked about some things that were slightly different, but God has used that to reveal some other things. And so on our Tip Tuesday, taking a quote from Dark Night of the Soul, we see that it says, "The soul that embraces the darkness becomes a vessel for God's light to shine through." So think about that. If your soul embraces the darkness, so instead of being fearful of it and wondering what's going to happen and trying to figure out whether you're going to live or die, if you just let all that go, let all of that go, and just embrace the darkness, what will happen is your mind will start to think more about God than you do about your circumstances. And then when you think about God and you think about all he's brought you through, not just in this cancer journey up to this moment, but in your entire life, when you think back on your past and you think back on where you were when you were a sinner and you didn't know God and how he saved you at that point and brought you into his family, when you think about the other times in your life when you know you should have been dead, but somehow you survived, and now because you are a child of God, you know that that was God's hand of mercy on you. And even when you think about the circumstances that brought you to your cancer diagnosis, when you received that shocking news from the doctor, you got that report that you were not expecting, that no matter how shocking it was, and it definitely was a traumatic experience, when you stop and think about what God had done in your life to prepare you for that moment so that you would be ready to handle it. And you think about all those things in the past that has gotten you to this point where you're in this dark night of the soul, you can rest on knowing that God is there with you. He has not forsaken you. He has never left you. He is there. And then when you start thinking about the promises of God and what he said he has in store for you and what you have to look forward to, oh, that fills you with anticipation. You have an expectation. You have this wonder about what has God got in store for me, because the scriptures say that there is glory beyond measure. And so you start to transcend your situation. You no longer worrying about how much pain you're in. You don't worry about the suffering you've gone through. You don't worry about whether you're going to live or die. on this side of eternity, because we know that we are spiritual beings that are having a human experience. We are not human beings that are having a spiritual experience. So once this human experience is over, the spirit still lives. So we now are focusing on the spiritual side of what's going on here. And we can transcend that, which allows us to transcend the fear and the worry and the anxiety. And we look forward to what God is going to do to us, for us, and through us. And so at this point, we recognize that death is not a period, it's a comma. It is not a stop, it is a transition point. So we're not worried about that anymore. We want to know what God is going to do at this moment. And that's when the transformation starts to happen. So we also say that there's scripture that comes with that. And the one that we've chosen for this week is 2 Corinthians 4:17-18. And it says, "For this slight momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all measure, because we look not at what can be seen, but what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, but what cannot be seen is eternal." Think about that. There are scriptures that also say, store your treasures up in heaven and don't store them here on earth, because you're not going to be here long. It's what you store in heaven are the treasures that you will have that you've put there. But also God has glory for you that you know nothing about. And when you get to that, that is what we are ultimately striving for. So this transformation starts to take place at the very rock bottom of the valley of dependence, in the darkest moment of your dark night of the soul. And this is the part where things are starting to shift in your favor. And you are starting to build up that anticipation about what's going to come next. And that's where the miracles happen. They happen spiritually, they happen emotionally, they even happen physically, because that's what happened to me. I was not, my odds of survival of my cancer, with 90% of my marrow cancerous and my kidneys failed and anemic, the doctors didn't even know how I made it to the hospital. But because I reached that point where I entrusted my life to God, that's when he did his greatest work in me. And he healed me. He healed me miraculously in that moment. He started to put back in me the good marrow cells and get rid of the cancerous marrow cells. And things started to change. And that was because I had entrusted my life to God. And I didn't think about all that at the moment. I was just saying, what else could I do? I knew I couldn't do anything. I know the doctors had done all they could. So all I could do was to look to God. I did not anticipate the transformation that was taking place in me when that happened. So again, when we come back to our Think About It Thursday question, it is to think about what God has done for you in the past and his promises for your future. How does that affect the way you view your present situation? Remember, you are in a life and death situation where it's an existential threat to your existence. But how do you view your present situation? And how do your afflictions in the moment compare with the glory God has promised you in your eternity? So we're thinking about eternity. We're thinking about where God wants us to be and where we're going to be in the future. And that's when that transformation happens. So I hope that this has been helpful to you, especially those who are struggling. Maybe you haven't reached that dark night of the soul yet, but you're moving in that direction. Or maybe you are a caregiver and you're watching your loved one as they are struggling in this battle and you're wondering what's going to happen to them. Or maybe you're a supporter and you're just trying to figure out what's the right thing to say or do, or how you should view what's happening here. Just understand that transformation can happen, and it happens at the lowest point. and God will do what God will do in the best interest of the cancer patient and your loved one. So with that, I hope you would dwell on that. And again, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder as we bring this to a close that we are, there is another Hope Over Fear workshop that's going to take place. And I'm trying to find the little announcement that we put over there. Let's see, I don't see it. Let's see, is that it? Yeah, I guess that's it. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's a Hope Over Fear workshop. You'll have to forgive us for trying this new stuff. There's a Hope Over Fear workshop that's taking place on May 25th, 10 to 12, and it's online, it's free, and Pacific time. And so we would really like for you to be there because we know that for those who are facing the fear of cancer, that hope is the answer. And so we want to talk about how you have hope over fear. And so we hope to see you there. Stay tuned and look on our Facebook page, and you'll see announcements about it, and also on LinkedIn, and we do have it on Instagram. So until next time, take care. This is Henry from Our Journeys of Faith Christian Cancer Coaching. God bless.